Hey, it's been a minute, and I just wanted to come back and talk to you about how your podcast may not necessarily be growing and how you can change that and what it's going to take, and also how it can start generating revenue for your business. So join us for Love My Dubb. We're going to be talking to Rob, and we're going to be talking Dubb. We're going to be talking about podcasting and revenue. So join us, jump in, hang around, and let's learn something together.
Hi, Scott Sullivan here. A lot of you know me as Sully. Dubb has doubled my business in the last year. You are about to go on a journey with Russ Johns. Welcome to I Love Dubb.
Well, the best thing about Dubb is the fact that I can make so many personal contacts with it, and it's so on point.
Why do I love Dubb? Let me count the ways. One, because my friend Russ Johns uses it and he knows things.
Welcome. Hey, Rob, thanks. It looks like Ruben's trying to jump in. I would love the opportunity to mention to everybody that Dubb has always been a favorite of mine. And one of the things that I wanted to share with everyone today is that, Dubb has their own podcast. Maybe you can mention about that podcast so we can talk about podcasts, Rob. So where's your podcast located?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ruben.
I was going to say to any podcast app near you is what I always like to say. Connection Loop is what it's called. Apple, Spotify. Yeah. Is there a specific episode or?
No. What we're talking about today, Ruben, is one of the things that you and I had been going back and forth on text messages, and how a lot of podcasters want to grow. They want to expand and develop revenue as a result of having a podcast. And I was talking to Rob before the show that many podcasters feel that their podcast is going to generate revenue, when in fact, a lot of times it's the value of the podcast and the information you're sharing that develops the opportunity for people to understand the value and the services that you offer your clients in your community. And with you as an example, Dubb is a huge opportunity to, we're sharing this information, we're sharing the value, we're sharing the information that Dubb can leverage your brand and help you grow. But it's absolutely, Dubb is one of the platforms that you're actually producing revenue from. So it's a marketing tool. It's a media that you can actually use to leverage that information. And I think you guys do an incredible job at it. And you and Rob have done some incredible work. So maybe you can walk us through your thought process and how that works in your environment, in your community.
Okay, got it. So I'm in the right room now. I've got my podcast mic on and my headphones. Sorry, I was in the wrong room. I was in the podcast promotion room. But here we are in the podcast introspection room. So yeah, I'd love to hear from Rob. I'll also kind of kick this off. By the way, when I wear this shirt, my nickname is Silver Fox. Another Robert here at the office actually gave me that name because of my hair and my shirt. So you guys are welcome to call me that. The podcast, the Connection Loop podcast, has really it's absolutely changed my life. And I don't say that about a lot of things. Okay. The reason why the podcast has changed my life, I would summarize it into 3 different categories. Number 1 is education. Okay. The amount of education that I have learned from hosting a podcast has been probably more more education than I've ever learned in my entire life, from any source, whether it's textbook, classroom environment, or the real world. Okay. Highly, highly educational. When you interview people who have made it to the highest points of their careers, of their industries, of their skill and their craft, you learn a lot. These are best-selling authors. These are people that have founded companies. These are people that have had confidence unlocks, that have figured out a way to get on a stage and to be confident and to communicate like you, Rob. And it's unbelievable what you're able to do when you interview these people. So knowledge, that's the first thing. The second thing is relationships. The amount of relationships that I've been able to build by having a podcast has been unbelievable, right? You meet with people, you make a connection. I've cried with people. I've heard people cry. I've heard devastating stories about life and about death and about it's been so emotional for me to have those connections in those capacities. It's kind of like meeting someone on an airplane, feeling comfortable to be able to talk about the worst problems in your life because they're a stranger, but then having them not be a stranger. And because you had that mutually vulnerable situation, you have a bond based of it. It's not like a one-way thing. It's a two-way thing. So relationships has been the second thing. And then the third thing that I would say is the sales, is the conversions. It's the brand lift. It's the exposure. It's the views. It's the people that listen to our conversations, that learn from them, that might get a partner link. Like Russ, when you share your Dubb partner link, that generates revenue. It's very powerful, right? It's powerful for all of us. And ultimately, it benefits everyone because they're leveraging technology. So these three things really summarize the whole experience for me. So knowledge, relationship, and sales conversions. Russ, am I in the right room now?
You are in the right room. You have
cool.
Landed to the opportunity of a lifetime.
Okay, cool.
And I have to amplify some of the things that you just mentioned because you know me, I'm completely a relationship guy.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of run my life. And it's not necessarily driven as much by the sales process as much about how I can add value to the community. And I think that's really what drives me personally. And I think you guys, and that's what I resonate with you guys, is you guys are always adding value. You're always adding something that is going to be incredibly consistent and useful to any number of individuals that hear it or get to capture that idea. And I think, Rob, like Ruben mentioned, getting up on stage and having a platform and having a place and having a community to speak to kind of builds this flywheel effect of, hey, we got some ideas, we've built some relationships, we've got some feedback, we've got this knowledge that Ruben spoke about. And now where do we take it? How do we amplify this? And how do we address this message to a much larger community? And maybe you could speak to a few ideas that you guys have worked through in your experience.
Yeah, Ruben and I have had, in particular with Rev's show, our show on YouTube, we've had many different iterations, of Rev's show since we've come up with it. And I feel that in the world we're in today, when it comes to messaging and content specifically, we're all looking, okay, what's the most effective way to get that content out there? What do the analytics look like? What do the numbers look like? And I feel that we're always constantly evolving and learning and changing. And especially with technology today, we always talk about technology making things easier for us, not blocking us. So we have so many ways, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's advertising, whether it's podcasts, whether it's YouTube shows, we have ways to see how are we affecting, what do the numbers look like? Are people tuning in at this time? What subjects are they relating to? Even by the comments you get, below the videos, you can really lean into, wow, someone wants to know more about that, or maybe that hit home, or they have a question about this. So we're able to really be reactive in a lot of ways when we get these reactions from our content that we're creating. When there's a community out there, in particular, when people have, Facebook groups or communities that where they really share ideas and they have open conversations, podcasts are one of the strongest ways to do that. Ruben has interviewed so many people, over the years, and like he said, has learned so much. And just the conversations, think about back in the day, if you were working out, maybe going for a run or you're doing something, music, and it still happens, music motivates you to do your thing. But how many people now listen to podcasts when they're doing something? Maybe they're cleaning their home or they're doing, but they're really dialed into the conversation. I almost feel like podcast doesn't do it justice, the name of it. It must be like combo cast or something, because you're really leaning in to hear that back and forth like a tennis match. You're almost like you're not sitting and listening to one person speak about something. You're getting that organic interview where you're really finding out about that other person, and that live reaction to what someone says. That's gold for a lot of people, and those are the things that wake people up. So yeah, that would be my take.
And don't you mean pickleball?
Yeah, I was saying tennis to speak to the broader audience, as pickleball is trying to break through the tennis bubble. So there we go.
Rob,
it's getting incredibly popular. I think it's the fastest growing sport nowadays.
I have this hidden agenda, not so hidden agenda, to recruit Rob as my partner, my pickleball partner. And in the second time he's played, he almost kicked my butt in pickleball. He's played it 2 times. And I've played it probably 12 times. So that's why I'm trying to recruit him.
It's a fun game to play that's less intense as tennis. And it's, think about it. You have the court there with a wiffle ball pretty much, and like a paddle, it's just a lot of fun.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Well, here's the analogy. Pickleball is to podcasting as tennis is to news interviewing.
Okay.
Maybe.
But
don't you see, and I like where you're going with that, because as I see it from where I'm sitting, and maybe I'm in this bubble.
Yeah.
However, there's a lot of individuals that have something important to say and something to share. And the beautiful thing about podcasting is that you don't have to have permission. You can start it on your own. You can develop your message, your media, your audience, your community. And there's so many things that you can do with that. And you don't need a large corporation. You don't need lots of engineers. You don't need, anything other than to start with your phone and to share your message and your ideas and engage, like you said, Ruben, in the relationship with your community. And that's what it's really about. That's the power of podcasting. And I've been teaching podcasting since 2012, 2013. And the reality is we have an opportunity. You are the media. You are the message. You have the brand. So anything that you want to develop, you can develop for yourself and your community.
It's amazing. I was on a podcast this morning. I love saying that. I was on a podcast this morning. It's one of my favorite things in the process. No, but in all seriousness, being on podcasts is a lot of fun. And when you start a podcast, you get on other podcasts. So you create a stage for yourself, and then other people create the stage for you, which is an amazing cycle effect, right? But I was on a podcast with Rachel, and I'm going to give you the name of her podcast in just a moment. She great, amazing personality, former sort of, current still voiceover actor and vocalist, and just sort of personality, almost like a radio personality, a video sort of radio personality. And she's so fun to talk to, and she's so engaging. And what's interesting is that she works for a big, fat, huge, large company. She has started this podcast as an entrepreneur working for this corporation, which is Annie Mac. And now she is building her personal brand, helping build the corporate brand, making relationships with people that she can recruit, that she can work for, vendors, suppliers, partners, everyone basically. And she's doing it while laughing the entire way and having an amazing time and just building these relationships. And it's like anyone is, whether you work for a company, whether you don't work for a company, whether you're okay with being on video, whether you're not, whether you have experience with technology or whether you're not, no matter what your situation is, I can't think of why you would not want to have a podcast, because it's so much fun and you can learn, and it's basically documenting your life. Because how many of us have gone through the experience of spending a year or 2, 5 years, 10 years working at a job or starting a company, and maybe it wasn't a totally pleasurable experience? At least if you have the podcast, you're documenting the whole thing. So you can go back, you can share, you can build your personal brand. And then it just helps you for the next gig that you get, because they're like, wow, this person's a personality. They have a social following. They've got a voice. They're a great public speaker. These are all assets that are applicable in any capacity.
Well, I think we've talked about this in the show before, Ruben, because the way I look at it is skill stacking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have that ability to speak into a microphone on your phone. You start there, and then all of a sudden you get more comfortable with what you're saying, what you're sharing. And because you're sharing it, it becomes clear. It becomes clear in how you're positioning your brand, your ideas, your content. And then because of that, all of a sudden you're able to speak to different audiences and expand that audience and invite other people into the conversation. And I think that we've all seen this in the last number of years where, you know, you start growing and you narrow your focus and attention. You get really good at what you're doing on this podcast. And that's how the community grows. That's how your brand grows. And ultimately that's how your revenue grows. And it takes practice. It takes being comfortable. I remember the first time you and I, Ruben, got on a live stream. It wasn't as comfortable as you are today. I mean, you're still pro, and you did a great job, and you're still continuing to expand and
it was hard.
It is hard
back then. You know?
Yeah, it's not always easy, but you can see the progress that you've made and some of the things that you've done. So talk about that.
Well, I think for me, the best metaphor or analogy, not sure which one this is, that I could provide to you is there was a music video that I did 10 years ago with some friends, sort of some old friends that I had played music with, an old band, if you will. And I remember my friend recorded this fun little video at my house, and it was great. It was a fun little thing, right? And I uploaded it to my YouTube account, and then I never published it. I never published it. So very recently, I was looking back into my YouTube account, and I scrolled all the way to the bottom, and I was like, wow, I never published that video, and it's been a decade. It's been a decade, and I never published a music video. And I realized, I was like, you know what? What was I feeling when I didn't want to publish that video? I was probably feeling some trepidation, some pause, some concern. Do I want to put this out there? Am I a musician? Is this my thing now, where I'm a whatever? And imposter syndrome, fear, insecurity, like all these things are relevant here. And I never published. So of course I had to publish it, and it's still there, and it's there now, which is hilarious, because Rachel in the podcast, and the reason why it's fresh in my mind is because Rachel in the podcast actually mentioned it today. she actually found it. So the reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of us have to go through a big fat process to get confident, to feel comfortable, to not feel imposter syndrome. And frankly, the only way that you can do that is with time and practice.
Yeah. I want to ask Rob. Rob, you have always appeared very comfortable on camera, very polished. And what was your journey like? What was the task and effort that you went through to lean up to this?
For me, when I was a kid, I was one of those kind of kids that my dad had the big clunky camcorder. And I always wanted to make stuff. I'm like, okay, I want to shoot this. I want to do this. I wanted to do all that stuff. I loved movies. I wanted to do acting all the time. Just constantly outgoing as far as that. So as I started to grow up, there was a mixture of sports and theater. And, for me, it was kind of almost like a similar type thing. When I played sports, I realized there was an audience, but you block that out when you're playing. It's like they're not even there. It's like you can feel it, but they're not there. So with theater, it was very similar, telling this organic story, leaning into these different characters, feeling the audience, but not letting them come into the space that you're in. So I feel like just for me, having done that a lot of my life, and then, going through, different coaching areas and things like that, acting and all that kind of good stuff, it just was a very natural transition to, instead of speaking in front of an audience, to speak to the camera, which in a way is a bigger audience, because it could reach millions of people and you don't even know it, because there's that little lights on you. You don't know how many people are on the other side. So for me, it was just more of a natural transition to loving to express myself and do all this stuff. And it's just a different form of technology that's kind of made that possible.
Yeah. And I, you know, for myself, growing up in the radio and television broadcasting environment, from the engineering operations side, it's really changed. And I get excited because I think we're living in the most amazing time in the history of humanity as it relates to creating content, sharing information, and actually building relationships and connections. If anybody had told you 10 years ago that you'd be building and developing communities around the world, you'd be going, you're crazy. You know, I don't have the power or money. I don't have the company big enough to do that. And I think that's really where the shift needs to take place in everybody's mindset is how do you leverage that technology that we have available today to grow your community, to build your sales, build awareness, create content that actually is going to develop into revenue. And that's really what podcasting allows and affords everybody in this community to do right now, every single time. So I get excited about it. So I just have to say, and Ruben, you had mentioned a podcast that you were on this morning. What was it?
Yeah. So I sent you the message over the chat. It's called Lending Leadership with Rachel Tresh. So
okay.
I'll
put it up here.
Yeah.
Let's give her a shout out.
Shout out to Rachel.
So if you want to go spot Ruben in the wild, you can go to another podcast after you watch this one.
that has not yet been published.
It's not been published, but he will be found in the future. So, but you make a great point, Ruben, is just like what Rob was saying, you know, this is an evolution. And as you get more and more available online and people start inviting you into their show, you know, it all starts snowballing. And I've seen this evolve since 2010.
Yeah.
And how it's just continued to grow. And I love live streaming only because it gives that emotional touch immediately and allows us the opportunity to actually have an honest, open conversation about anything, and the conversation could go anywhere. So I just want to mention that to individuals. If you're not podcasting, if you're not live streaming, and you're not doing that for your business, you're not creating content, just like what we were talking about with Rachel, organizations have to realize that that's another marketing media that you can use to promote your business internal to your employees and also to your customers and community.
Yes.
So how have you leveraged that in your business, Ruben?
Well, I think that one of the things that I'd love to explore is sort of to reverse engineer this is what is the operational process behind all of this? So I'd love to answer your question with a question and understand from your perspective, how is it that we can leverage tech to streamline this whole process?
I'm so glad you asked, Ruben, because I feel that there's a software that I use to leverage my podcast and everything that I'm doing in podcasting world over the last 5 years is leading up to this platform that I call LoveMyDubb, and dubb.com. If you're there, you can actually use my link. I'll drop it in the comments. But ultimately, once you have created a podcast episode, once you have created a piece of content, there's two forms. There's from a technical perspective, use Dubb and personalize an invitation to individuals that you want to have on your show, and also use that invitation to book them on a spot so you don't have to think about it. It's like let's compare our calendars, that email battle, you go back and forth. Oh, I'm not available then. Oh, yes, I'm available then. Just allow the individual that you're inviting to be on your show to select the day that works for their schedule. Then you don't have to think about it. Consistency in creating a show at the same time every week allows and affords you the opportunity to book that time slot, and you don't even have to think about it. So personalize the invitation, and then allow the booking to take place automatically, and then also use it to go to back to a landing page in Dubb where you can actually thank them for booking their time and what to expect next. And I think that's the introduction to your podcast. Then you have the recording and the podcast in place. And then afterwards, you can actually send them the links to where they can find it, share it, and also maybe make a comment or recommend the show. And then also use that to follow up with them on a regular basis and help them move their brand forward, or introduce them to other individuals, or actually expand the conversation to doing business with you. So that's the basic cycle of how to use Dubb immediately to generate revenue for your business with your podcast.
That was incredible. I mean, we need to evangelize this type of leverage, because starting out the Connection Loop podcast was not easy by any stretch of imagination. The first challenge is finding guests when you don't have any episodes. So it's the chicken and the egg problem, number one. Number two is finally, when you actually get someone's attention, to lock a date, to be able to say, okay, this is when we're meeting. Then the next challenge is meeting in an environment where you can record, you can chat, you can go back and forth, you can do some of the real-time editing, kind of like what you're doing right now. That's the next challenge. Then after that is, how do you publish the podcast, right? How do you get it on all of the channels? Because every day I look, there's another place to listen to podcasts on, right? It started out with iTunes or Apple Music, and then it went to, I think, Spotify, of course, Google Play, and now it's infinite, right? Then the next thing is, how do you promote the podcast? How do you take individual clips from the podcast videos? Because hopefully you start with video. I mean, I always recommend that. And then taking those videos and then turning them into square format or 9:16 format, and then creating a content calendar and posting those on TikTok or Instagram Reels or Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube. Hopefully all of the above. Then taking the full video podcast and then publishing that on YouTube. And then now promoting all those links, and then hashtagging the people that you were on the podcast with. And then guess what? Once you've completed all those steps, then you just rinse and repeat, and you have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. So you get to do it all over again. Thank you. And we were actually, it's funny that you should say that, because we were saying that in the podcast this morning. We get to do this all over again. How lucky are we?
Yeah.
The joke in the podcast this morning is, I get to have a gardener that cuts my lawn while I'm on a podcast that makes the sound. I don't have to mow my lawn myself.
Well, Ruben, what's really ironic is that just like LoveMyDubb, I have a brand called Podcast Your Brand.
Nice.
And so, one of the things that I share with anyone that will listen is, there's a learning curve. Just like you mentioned, there's a learning curve to getting launched, to understanding what you need, how you need to implement it, what needs to take place, and how it needs to take place. And I actually created a free course using Dubb as a learning platform to share that information on Podcast Your Brand. So if you want to, you can go to Podcast Your Brand, sign up for the course, the free course. And then if you want some additional assistance or support, I'm available, and you can book some time with me. Also, there's another element that takes advantage if you want a producer, like I produce shows for other people. And that opportunity is something that is a strategy as a part of, how I use Dubb, how I use podcasting together in order to accomplish a much larger goal of helping others, help more people. And I think it's important for people to understand that you have help. There are people out there that are willing to help and assist you in that journey.
Unbelievable. Podcastyourbrand.com. Russ, I need to talk to you because I know so many podcasters that need to get access to this. So we need to connect and make that happen.
Well, I really appreciate you guys. I really thank you for being here. Rob, any other elements that you got coming up in the next 6 months on some activities that you want to share with us today?
We have in the pipeline, we have a few things in the works. Ruben and Darius recently did that AI webinar, so we've kind of incorporated, some of that. We have some really neat teleprompter things kind of coming up that are really, really cool. So we have some really neat, innovative, in-house kind of little features that are going to really make things more efficient and easier and more effective for everybody. So.
Well, I know that you have several things going on, and I just want to recognize the Dubb platform. And also, I think I have, let me see, I think I have a link to that. If anybody wants to sign up, I gotta go back in the archives, sign the link to sign up. Dubb.com/R for Russ /Russ Johns, and sign up for Dubb, your free trial. And anybody that signs up or needs some assistance, wait, but there's more. And if you go to LoveMyDubb.com, you can also sign up for a free 6-day webinar video series that will walk you through some of the steps of becoming a Dubb expert and some of the things you can use in your business. And I use Dubb as a teaching tool for that. So it's kind of a meta teaching opportunity. So I just want to share that with you guys. Also, anything else, Ruben, you want to do before you wrap up? I know you have another event coming up here shortly.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Russ. Really appreciate you as always. I just wanted to encourage anyone listening to this video, reach out to Russ. If you have a podcast and if you want to amplify it, reach out to Russ. If you don't have a podcast and if you want to start one, reach out to Russ. No matter what you do, reach out to Russ.
And I think you can bookruss.com.
Bookruss.com. There it is.
All right, guys. Well, hey, this has been an adventure as always. I really appreciate you. And I'm on the mend. I'm coming back. So look forward to more activities in the Dubb community and everything that's going on. And Ruben, thank you for the shout out. And also let's carry on a conversation, because I know there are people out there that are struggling with how to implement and deliver their podcast to their community. So
can't wait to talk.
All right, guys, enjoy the day, because kindness is cool and smiles are free. And I want you to enjoy your day. All right.
Thanks guys.
Take care.